Revitalization funding. And the name is a little bit, how should I say this, misleading because it's not just for restaurant. It's actually for any food and drinks establishment. So we'll talk more into that. The employee retention tax credit, huge, huge money here too. So we'll talk about that for people with employees, or even if you're a S corporation paying yourself, this applies to you too. And then of course, the PPP forgiveness, which is where everybody should be doing right now that we're done with the PPP fund has been depleted. So we are focusing on now the forgiveness part of it. Not only that, I was able to kidnap and persuade this wonderful person here. He is, Uriel is from the Small Business Development Center, and he's in charge of the Orange County and the LA area. And he is so gracious to be here today. I'm so thankful to have your presence because you have so much knowledge that you can share with our group. He comes from an extensive background of financial and business advisors, been at this for 17 years, worked in leadership role for Fortune 500 companies, focused very much on commercial financing. And he got his MBA from Pepperdine University, which is a very expensive one. So I hope that you still don't have student loans. You might still have, just because that place, as I've heard, is great education come with money. So Uriel, is there anything else you want to tell everybody about yourself?
Oh, I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to discussing some of the items that we're gonna go over today. So thank you for having me here.
You're welcome. Thank you. So how we're going to do this is I have the presentation prepared with some key points, but as Uriel give us more information, when I sent out the video, we'll revise it a little bit and add more information on there for you. But this is kind of some of the bullet point that we will be discussing. And just to make it more lively, we're going to do it in terms of like a fire chat type of thing when I'm asking questions. So with that said, the audience, attendance, you can also ask this question anytime too. So with the restaurant revitalization funding, I want to talk about this one first because, maybe you're not in the restaurant business, right? But this is such good information that I have realized just recently that a lot of the smaller mom and pop business don't know about. And they're the people that really need the help the most. So just like get this information, and it's almost like a public service. Please reach out to the people that, the small diners that you go to, make sure they know about this, because there's just so much information out there, but there's also a lot of crooks and scammers out there too, that they probably don't know which information to rely on. And I can tell you that this is good stuff. This is straight from the SBA. Uriel will talk on this, and it's such good, it's big money that they can get, and it's and we can help them. Okay, we can help them get this. So Uriel, you want to talk a little bit about this program?
Absolutely. So thanks again, Lisa. The Restaurant Revitalization Fund, also known as the RRF, it provides restaurants with funding equal to their pandemic-related revenue losses, up to 10 million per business and no more than 5 million per physical location. And the recipients are not required to pay the funds back as long as the funds are used for the eligible uses.
So that's basically, this is like a grant, you guys.
It is a grant.
It's not like the PPP when it's a loan and you have to apply for forgiveness. This is a grant. They give you money. You just have to spend it correctly, right? And the list of eligible expenses is like basically everything that you need to do to run your business. Is that correct?
For the most part, yes. For the most part, all the we can go over a few of those eligible expenses. Those include things like payroll, mortgage principal, interest, rent, utilities, operational expenses,
accounting costs.
Absolutely, as well. And the The funding must be used by March 11, 2023. So you do have some quite time to use those funds. There are 3 calculations, and this is open not just for businesses who were open prior to the pandemic. So this is also open for those businesses who were established during the pandemic, and even for some of the ones that have not opened yet, but have incurred expenses throughout the 2020 and part of 2021.
As long as they incur those expenses prior to March 11, 2021, correct?
Prior to March 11, correct.
Yes.
And after February 15, 2020.
Yes.
Yep.
And then also on this note too, I have read that let's say you get the money, right? You get the grant and you spend it all by the end of this year. At the end of the year, you have to do the reporting and you have to, show them, like just like any grant. They want to see how you spend the money. So you do need financial backup. You need bookkeeping. How about that? To keep track of all this so that you can provide to them. So if you had spent it all, that's it. You report at the end of the year and then you're done. If you don't, if by that time you haven't spent it all, then you just need to report it annually at the end of the year up until March 11, 2023. So I would spend it and then, and then would just, be done with it by the end of the year, right? You have like 6-7 months to do that. So.
Yeah. If you don't spend it, then you would have to return, you would just have to return that back to the SBA.
Correct. Yeah. And in terms of the funding size, right? Anything less than $1,000 is too little, right? So they don't want to even, it's not worth it to be going through all the paperwork. And it's not $5 million per location. So guys, I'm really looking at helping the small business here, right? So those business that are maybe revenue 500,000, $1 million, 2 million, couple $1 million a year, rather than these big establishments. Like we really should make an effort all together here to help the small mom and pop. I'm very passionate about it. If you have anybody with question on this, please have them reach out to me. They don't have to be a client. I will want to help them to get this grant, right? And it's going on right now. So next, we're going to talk about, who qualifies. So you'll be surprised by who can qualify for this. How can you apply for this? And when you should be applying for this. Okay, so who can apply for this? Oriel, you tell us.
Yeah, so we have not just restaurants, but also food trucks, cart stands, food stands, caterers, bars, lounges, inns, taverns, salons, bakery, even food places that serve food out of home, out of their home as well, and breweries, wineries, tasting rooms. These are all eligible. It's not just restaurants.
So like, for example, let's say I have an inn, right? A small inn or hotel, but in that I have a restaurant that I serve people breakfast, lunch, dinner, right? That I can qualify if the gross receipt that I collect from that food establishment is 30% of my overall gross receipt for the business. Okay, so you don't have to be truly a restaurant. You don't have to be truly a bar. A winery can also be, can apply for this, right? As long as the overall gross receipt from drinks and food service to the public is at least 33% of the gross receipt. But what's cool about this is like food stand, food trucks, right? And Uriel also talk about home, like that's interesting, right? So I think like caterers also can qualify for this. And it's a lot of money, you guys. We're gonna talk about how much you can get for this. And the team, if anybody have any questions, just make sure you stop us, okay? And just ask the questions. How to apply for this?
Yeah, so in order to apply for this, you first have to register with the SBA. You would go to restaurants.sba.gov. You have that listed here on the presentation. you would sign in to the portal, and then from there you can start your application. If you have multiple restaurants, you can also add multiple applications there, where you can apply for the restaurants, depending on if you have multiple locations under one EIN, then it would just be one application. If you have multiple restaurants under different EINs, then it would be under different applications. One thing to note, and I think it's very important, right? It's that there is a limit on the number of locations and businesses that you have. So you must have under 20 businesses or associations in order to qualify for this loan. If you have more than 20 combined, that's restaurants and other business associations, then you wouldn't be eligible for the restaurant grant.
Okay, and my suggestion is this. So basically, in order for the SBA to give you this grant, you need to submit the form 3172. But what the SBA did is that they basically make that form, turn that form into an online question answer form that you can fill out online. So once you fill out all the questions online, then it basically generates a formal form 3172 that is a legal form. You sign electronically, and then that's what the SBA have on your file to be able to give you the grant. Now this form, they have the sample form on the SBA website that you can complete. So my suggestion is first go on right away, register at the portal so that you can get the login, right? And then print out that form and complete it by hand first yourself, so that you can get all your questions answered. It's 16 pages. So it seems a little scary, but it really isn't. It's just a lot of financial information about your business, and you have, financial statement from your SmartBean bookkeeping service. You can definitely answer all those questions. I've gone through that already myself. So there are also two ways to apply for this. You can actually go on the website, like we say, to apply for it online, or you can call them. So the number that I put there, 844-279-8898, you can call that number and they can take your application over the phone. I don't know how long the phone line, the wait is, but again, my suggestion is complete the form first, right? So you have all your information, and then you can either call or submit it online. And what you need to anticipate doing is that they first need to verify that you are a truly, qualified U.S. entity, which they make it super easy. You just go onto the website and you complete that form on the SBA website, IRS Form 4506, and then that would, they would accept that as qualified. And I think they have an instant check with the IRS on your entity. So be sure that you put the right name and the right EIN number that's matching with your legal documents. So your business might have a different name. Just make sure whatever's on your tax return is what you put in for verification. Gross receipt documentation, you guys, profit and loss report from SmartBean is gross receipt documentation. Bank statements are gross receipt. Those restaurants usually have some kind of point of sale system. Those reports are good too. So make sure you need those two pieces of information. And that's all you need. Like literally, they just say, if you're in this industry, you obviously have been impacted by the pandemic, then you can apply for it. There's no other requirements, right? Am I wrong? Is there any other hidden requirements I forgot about?
No, and I'm glad you have the form, SBA Form 3172 listed there, because it's really important to make sure to enter everything right into the portal. It's like you said, I believe it's more than 10 pages, but it's the application portal is actually would only take you about 20 minutes to complete. But it's very important that you enter all the information in there correctly, because if for some reason you need to go back and edit that or change that later, then you lose your place in line. This is a first come, first serve grant, and it's very important to enter the information correctly. So definitely keep that in mind.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Uriel. If I may follow up on that point, one of our guests has asked that there's a recent report in the OC Register talking about how much they've received in applications versus what is set aside for the RRF. Can you speak a little bit to that? Where are they in terms of funding, and how quickly are they processing those applications?
Absolutely. So they've already processed quite a few. I believe they've there's been I have the data here. There's been over 16,000 grants already issued. And yeah, it is running out quickly. So my advice to the audience would be to what are the chances of getting some funds? It's zero if you don't apply, right? It's zero if you don't apply. So if you at least apply, you'll get into the system and hopefully get a piece of the funds that are available. But definitely there was a lot of applicants in the beginning, and this is something that we don't expect everyone to be able to get funded because of the need, right? There's more need than actual funds are available. So hopefully there is some additional funds being added to this particular grant. But for now, get your application in and submit it correctly the first time. Get in line to receive the funds, and it's I don't know what's the chance of you getting the grant if you do apply, but I know that it'll be zero if you don't apply at all.
So the thing about it, though, that we'll talk about on the next slide too, is that even though they receive a lot of applications, though, the first 21 days, they reserve it they only process application from women-owned, veterans, or socially and economically disadvantaged individuals. So they can be tons of applications is coming in there, but doesn't mean that all of them are going to be processed first. So there's priority for minorities, women-owned, and such. And also, remember when the PPP came out? It's ran out within like 2 weeks, right? So then they see that it's a good program. There's a lot of application. There's a lot of need for there. They refunded that program like 3 or 4 times. So I'm hoping that will be the same thing. So like to Oria's point, that we just apply, get your name in the system, and then there might be other, grants or funding that come down the line, that if the SBA know that you need it, you're in the system, they will let you know about it, right? So apply right away, go to the website right now, get your name in there. And then Oreo, does your the SBDC assist business owners with completing? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the SBDC is the Small Business Development Center in Orange County. We assist business owners with finding funding, whether it's federal, state, or local city grants and loans. So we do help you with the application process. We do help you go over the calculations. So you can always we'll drop my contact information there. You can reach out to me and we can schedule some time for that.
Yes, so everybody, I will, if with your permission, I will share his information. This is great. If you have gone through this whole pandemic without having contact with the SBDC, you really should start right now, because they are super helpful. Okay, they can help with a lot, not just financing, but overall like opening back up. They can help with website coaching. They can help with. There's a lot of different services. Oreo is focusing mostly on just financial advising, and so with application and things like this. But they also keep you informed of other form of grants and loans that are coming out there, right? So just make sure you sign up with their newsletter. When their email come in, take a look at it to see what applied to you. Okay.
Yeah, and just to follow up to the question that was asked by the audience. So up to date, this is as of May 12th, a total of 2.7 billion out of the 28.6 billion allocated for this fund have been distributed to over 21,000 applicants since its opening day, which was May 3rd.
Okay, so like 10%.
Yeah.
Okay, not bad, guys. You have a chance to get in there. All right, I want to move quickly on to our next topics, which is the employee retention tax credit. And Brooks, I saw that you are in the audience, so Feel free to ask question or jump in to this. I know that Brooks is from Assure Payroll, and I actually obtained a lot of these information from my conversation with her. So correct me if I'm wrong anytime, Brooks, but I really did read up on this. I have some payroll background too, so I think I have a pretty good understanding. So what's going on here is the federal government is trying to give the employers tax credit. So tax credit is different from tax deductions, right? So tax credit is actually cash. It's not just a tax deduction against something that, to offset your tax liability. Let's say you at the end of the year when your CPA do your tax and it say you owe $10,000. The tax credit is actually cash. It's just like they offset it by, let's say you have one employee last year in 2020 that you can qualify for this credit. That's $5,000 tax credit, offset your tax, so then you only owe $5,000. It's a big deal. Now in 2020, it's $5,000 per employee for the whole year. 2021, listen to this. It's up to $7,000 per employee per quarter. For a particular employee, you can actually get up to $28,000 in tax credit for that one employee. Okay, now I know my audience, our clients are, smaller businesses, you have a few employees, or you might be a, S Corp owner that pay yourself on payroll. I see that you would qualify. Brooks, tell me if I'm wrong, but you would, even if it's just a one employee, the max that they would calculate for the wages would be $10,000 per year, right? For 2020. So
it would be actually 5,000 for the year for 2020, and then of course you've got the 7,000 per quarter. So
yeah, the wages though, the wages.
Yes,
$10,000 in wages, and they give you 50% of the wage.
Yes.
So if somebody, like, let's say somebody make like 20,000, it doesn't matter. It's still only cap out at 10,000, so that you then 50%, right?
Correct. Yes.
So Brooke, go ahead. This is your slide.
Absolutely.
I didn't know you would be joining us, so you speak on it, if you could.
Well, the wonderful thing about the ERTC is that it affects everyone. You're basically leaving money on the table if you don't take advantage of it. And I've got small business owners that, accepted PPP loans, and they only have 5 or 6 employees, and they're still going to be able to get back in the employee retention tax credit over $60,000. I mean, that's significant. As a small business owner with 5 or 6 employees, just imagine what that could do to your bottom line. It's truly a no-brainer.
Yeah, so in this, you guys, it's the calculation of this is a little complicated because they want to make sure they factor out the PPP. They don't want you to double dip, right? So for like a given period, you know how the PPP has the cover period, which is the period of time when you use that PPP money to pay the employees' wages. Up to at least 60% of the PPP loan need to go to employees' wages for you to get 100% forgiven. So they just want to make sure that that period of time that you're using for the cover period for the PPP is not the same period that you'll be using to get this tax credit. That's all. You can have both. So that was a misunderstanding earlier in the program where people who get PPP didn't realize that they can also get employees retention tax credit. The calculation of all this is a little bit complicated, and so therefore you really need to, seek out professionals. And by professional, it's the payroll company. And I spoke to Brooke about this yesterday. Not all payroll companies do this, or if they do, the fees could be different. So I would suggest that, sorry about this, Brooke, but for like ease of doing this, the first thing I would do is I would check with your existing payroll company. Hey, are you doing this? How easy is it for you to help me with this? And how much is it going to cost me for you to do this? And then look for other options to see what's out there, right? So I have Brooke contact information. she would be able, Brooke, do you want to just let one off and you can tell people how much you charge, or do you want to talk about that right now?
I'm more than happy to do that. Absolutely. So, one thing that's great about the company is, we cater to smaller businesses. So 80 to 90% of our businesses are 30 employees or less. So we're keeping the cost in mind. Some of my competitors are not even offering this service because they don't want to deal with the tax liability that goes along with refiling the quarterly filings. So we are going to handle your 941s. It's a simple one-time $500 fee to set up the retention tax credit. And then it is $500 for each quarter that we then turn around and provide you a tax credit. Now, let's say, for example, you tell me that, hey, Brooke, I'm going to qualify for 2 quarters out of 2020, and I should qualify for all 4 quarters in 2021. And we go through the numbers and that's not quite right. And I was billing you as though we were going to do 6 quarters. You qualify for 4, you will only pay for the 4. We're not going to charge you if you do not qualify for the employee retention tax credit.
And just like for Brooke, though, they only will be able to help you with that if they are your payroll company. So if you are deciding to go with Brooke, you do need to change over to her payroll service. So, like I said, for ease of this, first thing I'll do is check with your existing company, see if they can do it. How easy can they help you? Like, could they truly help you, or they just give you the form and tell you to fill it out, right? You want to make sure they really are helping you, like, handle it, right? And then how much would they charge? And then now that you know how much Brooke charges, I mean, in terms of their payroll service and everything, I think all that, the payroll fees and everything, they're all probably about the same. So, but keep that in mind when you are going through this. What they would need is you would need to actually prove, though, that your business was affected by the pandemic. Okay, so for 2020, you have to prove that your gross receipt was reduced by 50%. Okay, but for 2021, you only have to prove that your gross receipt was reduced by 20% compared to 2019. So 2019 is the baseline. And then you compare 2020 number on it, and 2020 number has to be 50% or more in reduction in gross revenue. And then 2021 also compared to 19, but it is only 20% reduction or more. So a lot of people should be able to qualify at least for 2021. Okay.
I have a quick follow-up question on that, SmartBean, in terms of like qualification, in terms of reduction of gross receipts. Do you need to prove that if there were government regulations that were instituted during the pandemic that interrupted your services? Like, you don't have to show that if you were like a restaurant or some other business that was interrupted.
Great question. Correct?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. If you were forced to shut down, then you will qualify as well. So that one example that I used of the 5 to 6 employees, it happened to be a dental office and they were closed for 3 months. They were forced to shut down. So that also figures into his employee retention tax credit. So that's going to affect, definitely our medical practices. That will also affect, obviously, our restaurants too. So lots of good opportunities, and great question too, Victor. Thank you.
Yes, great question. I know some of our audience here, some of our clients, you definitely need to look at this. And then if you are SmartBean clients, all you need is let us know. We'll run that report for you, in terms of, like, if you have a profit and loss report that does a comparison and show the reductions, it's so much easier just to as a proof, right? But yeah, government description is definitely one that we need to talk about. All right, so we're moving on to the last topics, and we do have about 20, 25 minutes. So ask your questions. Paycheck Protection Program forgiveness. So Uriel, do you want to talk a little bit about this hot topics?
Absolutely. So now that the PPP program is winding down, most lenders are not accepting applications for new PPP loans. Very few CDFIs and smaller community banks are accepting, but again, it's winding down until the funds run out completely or the end of May 31st. However, most of the clients that I'm working with, and I'm sure you are as well, are preparing to submit their forgiveness application. And this is a matter of a few things. One, the lender that you applied with, are they accepting the applications yet, right? Because in order for you to apply for the forgiveness, you have to first have gone through the cover period, whether it's the 8 period or the 24-week period, and use the funds already. So once you use the funds, then you're eligible to apply for the forgiveness. But the second piece of that is the lender ready to accept your application? So check with your lender, with their bank or whoever you applied with for the PPP first and second draw, and find out if they're accepting applications. The main thing here is that you maintain the employee number, the number of employees and the compensation levels remain the same throughout the cover period. That you use the funds for the eligible expenses and payroll cost, and that the payroll cost was that you used at least 60% of that for payroll. That criteria would allow you to submit the application for forgiveness. I think if you go to the next page, or is that
so
the only
on that note, really quickly though, is that this become important, you guys, the cover period that we're selecting, right? Because in the past, I was thinking, hey, 8 to 24 weeks, where the Paycheck Protection Program loan amount was calculated on 2.5 months worth of payroll. So I'm thinking, just make the cover period 2.5 months, and then you'll find 100% of the money spent on payroll. Definitely you're going to get forgiven. You don't need to worry about receipts for your mortgage and your utilities and all that stuff, right? No, that's actually right now I'm reconsidering it because of the employees retention tax credit, right? So you want to make sure that you're strategic about your cover period so that you can do both programs for that quarter. You don't want to use up the time. You don't want the cover period to be longer than it needs to be. It has to be like right? So it's important, like SmartBean helps our client with completing the forgiveness. I know a lot of you on here had already submitted your request for us to do that. And we are, now that the Paycheck Protection Program loan is done, essentially, we are going to start applying for forgiveness for our client next week, okay? So you're gonna be hearing from me and my team to do verification or your log into your lender, and we're helping with that process for you. And I am very strategic about the cover period, what expenses can we include it in there for you so that you can potentially also get you should get the employee retention tax credit. Okay, that's a lot of money on the table and you need it. You need it, and because you can pay for accounting services too, which is not a lot, but I'm just kidding. Okay, so when should we apply for the forgiveness? I know, Oreo, you kind of already mentioned, but.
Yeah, definitely. If you're ready to apply, check with your lender to make sure they're accepting the applications.
Yeah, so here I have an example, you guys, because I've had lenders, they want to clean up their books, right? So as soon as the system is ready, they've been sending you email left and right and say, hey, you need to apply for forgiveness, you apply for forgiveness, because they have their own purpose. But what we need to think about is you don't have to apply for it until, first your cover period is done. And as long as you apply for it within 10 months after the cover period, you're fine. Even if you apply after and you already started paying for the payment, they will need to refund it to you if 100% is forgiven. So there's no need to worry about it or stress out about it. And that is why with SmartBean, we had dedicated the last few months just on getting our clients the PPP loan. And now we're focused on forgiveness because I know that you all will be just fine, right? But I understand the urgency just because the lenders has been probably bugging you about it. So I have an example here, like if you get your PPP-1 loan in May 1st of 2020, for example, you use it within 10 weeks cover period, right? And so that will be 100% of the payroll cost will go to your payroll expense. definitely you'll be forgiven. Then you should apply for PPP forgiveness like this month, right? But let's say you apply for it next month, it's not the end of the world. You will be fine. So is there any more questions on this here? No question, huh? All right, so you all are submitting for SmartBean to do. Is that why you don't care, right? You don't have questions. That's no problem. I think that is about all I have. Is there anything else you want to add to this, Julio?
Just the a lot of clients have questions about which form to use, and so if you want to prepare, you can go to the SBA.gov website, and there are 3 different forms that they have. However, I think Victor, you have.
Yeah, I had a quick question. Like, if anybody has questions to follow up with you, would you mind putting in your contact information in the chat so that everybody can copy that as well? And then we have it on hand. That would be really helpful.
Absolutely, I'll do that in just a moment here. But yeah, with that said, it's if you have questions about which form to use, if your lender will most likely choose the forms. But if you're a sole proprietor, you can use the easy form or the S form. I believe that number is, let me just look it up here.
3805, I think.
3805S. Also, if your grant is under 150,000, it would be the same form. Okay, so keep that in mind, and but don't stress out too much about that. Your bank will have the form for you, and also, even though you're not required to provide proof of expenses with the forms, with the easy form and the S form, rather the S form, it's more of a certification if it's under 150,000. However, you are required to keep it on your records, I believe for about 3 to 5 years is the time, because the SBA can come back and audit that at any time. Okay?
Correct. And so for SmartBean clients, when I apply for forgiveness for you, I create a folder in your client's folder portal, and I put all the backup information in there. So should we ever get audited, somebody asks about it, we have all the information in there. Okay. One thing I just realized that we didn't talk about was in terms of the restaurant revitalization funding is how they calculate the grant amount. I don't know if everybody know that, but the way they calculate it's so nice. Is this.
I think we lost Lisa just as she was telling us the most important piece of information.
Yeah, so there's 3 calculations. The first calculation is for those businesses that were established prior to 2019. And so what you would do in that event is you would take your 2000, that's the first calculation. You would take your 2019 gross receipts and then subtract the 2020 gross receipts. That would give you a difference. The whole goal of this program is to make you whole back to 2019 numbers. And so you would use that and then subtract any PPP loans that you were granted, and that would be your award amount. There's also 2 additional calculations, and the second calculation is if you started your business sometime in, if you were partially, if you have started your business partially in 2019 or sometime in 2020. And so what you would do in that event is the second calculation allows you to do a prorated amount of your gross receipts for the year. And then that would give you an annual figure of what that gross receipt would be. You would then do the similar thing you did in calculation 1, which is reduce the gross the gross receipts from 2020. I'm sorry, for 2020, and that would also yield your award amount. Let me see if I have a presentation access, I can show you how that looks here. Just a second. Okay, if you can see my screen here. Okay, I'm getting some nods, so yeah. So for entities open during, the second calculation would be, we went over the first calculation, okay? Which was you take your 2019 gross receipts minus your 2020 gross receipts minus your total PPP receipts, and that would be your grant award. And again, if you were open during 2019, you would take your average monthly restaurant gross receipts, which was the amount, the number of months that you were open, and then you would multiply that by 12. So again, that would give you that yearly figure, and then you subtract that by the 2020 gross sales, and that would give you a total amount in PPP. I'm sorry, that would give you, my apologies. You would then subtract also the PPP from there, and that would give you a grant amount. Now, if you were open during 2020 or 2021, you wouldn't use your gross receipts, but rather you would use the eligible expenses. And this is what's different about this grant compared to any other grant that's out there. This one allows you to apply for the grant, even if you weren't open prior to the pandemic. So in this case, instead of getting the gross receipts, you would get your eligible expenses. So whatever you spend in opening that business, or even if you haven't opened yet, whatever you've spent thus far from February 15, 2020 through March 11, 2021. And then you would subtract any gross receipts. So if you ended up opening sometime in 2020 or in 2021, you would subtract those gross receipts. And then you would also subtract any PPP if you received it, and that would also give you the grant amount. So those are the calculations. Do we have Lisa back?
Thank you so much. My internet just went out, so I'm calling in from my phone. But thank you so much for taking over.
Yeah. No worries. So yeah, I hope that if you have any questions, some of these calculations can get a little tricky and complicated, especially if you have multiple businesses. So please reach out to us. We'd be happy to help you out with figuring out the calculation and to see if you're eligible for this grant. I'm not sure if I've posted my information yet, but let me go ahead and do that now.
And if anybody else has any questions, I just posted Elisa's phone number that you can refer any calls to her or any questions to her, and she'll be able to answer questions about either the RRF, the PPP forgiveness, or the employee retention tax credit.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody. If we don't have any more questions, we can end our session today. All right.
All right. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me here today. I did put my contact information there for anybody that wants to reach out.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. We will definitely share your information because I know the SBDC Center is wonderful. It's helped a lot of my clients. So I really appreciate you being here. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I will have more and more, and I'm thinking if there's a lot of questions that are coming in about a particular fund, grants, or topics, then I will definitely have another session on just that. So let me know, give me your feedback, send me an email, text, whatever, and I will just stay in touch, and then we are here to help you. So all you gotta do is reach out, all right? Have a wonderful day, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.